for years, you know. That's what he got. So that's Milgaard's story. We're on to part two. If you didn't catch the David Milgaard story and that somehow randomly popped up for you, go to the David Milgaard part one episode. Terrible miscarriage of justice. What they did to that man shouldn't happen. But what happened to the guy that actually did the crime? Compulsively tidy as a child, Larry Fisher grew up to become a serial rapist with a deeply rooted hatred of women. Fisher denied any guilt in the Miller murder, but told the top court he had been sexually abused by an aunt and admitted harboring an inner hatred, anger, and frustration to women. So, I don't know. You gotta be careful. Like, whatever happened with him and the auntie, like, now you're creating a monster. So on March 31st, 1980, so this is now 11 years after the first slaying that Milgaard went down for. So this guy should have been in jail. They put Milgaard dead, and 11 years later, Fisher slashed the throat of a woman who was in her 60s and raped and smothered her outside of her home in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, as he left her for dead, in the words of a prosecutor. So he pounced on a 60-year-old woman in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. It's a small community. That type of thing doesn't happen up there like that often. It's nothing like Winnipeg. For those of you who've been up to North Battleford, it's a northern Saskatchewan town. I'd compare it probably like Thompson, something like that. Maybe Dauphin. So he rifled through her purse, as he had done in previous attacks, just like in Gail Miller's murder. And that night, Fisher was arrested in his mother's basement, washing blood off his work boots. In August 1991, the Star, I'm assuming Toronto Star, visited Fisher's mother, Marceline, at her home where she lived alone, a couple blocks from the woman he almost killed. So he's not actually a serial killer. He's a serial rapist, alleged murderer, and convicted, it appears at least, attempted murderer. His mother told the Star she didn't understand what fueled her son's rage. Well, again, I don't know if the auntie was on her side, it's their sister or what, but apparently what fueled his rage is that he got touched up by the auntie. I'm not going to assume it was her sister, but that's what fueled the rage. I don't know why they're here. So it doesn't sound like his mother was necessarily top-notch, which isn't uncommon amongst serial rapist murderers. I'm not going to criticize the woman, whatever. Hey, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what happened. But you might want to pay attention. Like, I know from the first, like, you know, I guess I read the paper and stuff. But it's your son, so, you know, but who knows? You know, he was a devoted Sea Cadet, a good hockey player, and someone who kept his room clean and helped out in the garden, she said. So, you know, dear, she's saying he was a good boy. All right, hun. She said he never talked back to me. He'd rather wash dishes than go drinking. She said Larry and his sister were overprotected. She didn't want them mixing with the worst kind of kids. Oh, okay. So you're one of them. So despite your child being a convicted serial rapist, murderer, slashed the throat as some 60-year-old woman raped her, left her to bleed out. I don't know how she lived. You're worried about him hanging out with the other kids. I think he did the other kids a bit of a favor, but the fact is that he sounds like he was a bit of a mama's boy. Good youth. most of these weirdos, they never really been outside. Because you can't act like that out there, you know. First off, these chicks will do you just as dirty. So he's going after an elderly woman. I'm sure that the first victim probably tried to fight him off a bit more than he wanted. And that's how she ended up dead, when he probably smothered her in the snowbank. Because he probably didn't even get that rape off. But who knows? They don't really release any details on it because it's so covered up. So we'll just talk about this case. He's in the basement washing blood off his work boots, but she didn't think that was strange or anything like that. Was he washing the dishes? He wouldn't go drink. Oh, he's just washing his boots. What's that? He stepped in some paint there? Some cranberry juice? What you got? Like, yeah, no, dear. Mixing with the worst kind of kids, I don't know. But his relationship with his father was always ugly, she said. So she was great. Everything was great with them. But the daddy, that was the problem. When she was pregnant with Larry, she said she was raped by Larry's father. And that he used to beat her. And then police finally ran him out of town. When Fisher was 3, when his father moved out. And then his father died in the late 70s. And Fisher refused to go to the funeral. So he was already raping and murdering women by that point. He wasn't really trying to check out Pops' funeral. Pops apparently was a rapist too, but she doesn't really see any reason why he would have turned out anything other than a perfectly normal, well-adjusted guy. You know, just because his dad was an abusive rapist of pregnant women who was run out of town by the police. You know, he was washing the dishes. Like, he didn't even want to go grab a beer with the friends he didn't have. And she wouldn't have let him hang out with them anyway. You know, those troublemakers. So, at this point, they've had to talk to the ex-wife. The reporters are trying to figure this out. So, Linda, in 91, is in Cando, Saskatchewan. I'm not familiar with the town too closely, and that should tell you something. That's probably pretty far up north, I'm thinking, because I've been pretty much everywhere in the prairies. So Cando, that doesn't jump out to me a little bit. I might have seen the name here or there, but I'm guessing that's a little further up north of Battleford. And I'm not even pronouncing it right, because I always put it up there if I've not been there before. So she said she married him when she was just 17. Shortly after she lost her virginity, she said that he raped her. And then I guess she married him and they moved to Saskatoon shortly after they were married. Soon after, a series of knife-point rapes occurred in their neighborhood. And you kind of hear that a lot, like, you know, Bernardo and some of these weirdo rapists, like, yeah, it's weird. You just moved here and all these women are getting raped at knife point. Like, you know, like they were keenly putting their ear to the streets when Milgaard was passing through town. But they weren't putting 2 and 2 together. This guy was operating with impunity in Saskatchewan. Raping women, murdering some, trying to. So, Linda said that she was baffled by his apparently uncontrollable fury against women. That's kind of another red flag. Fisher did not like women to enjoy themselves during sex, he said. I think he wanted me to be totally passive, he said. He wanted control, even then. So, I don't know. Again, these are old school guys. You know, like I grew up in a different time, and I've seen kind of the evolution of a lot of different phases of Western society. And yeah, there was a time where, you know, there was a lot of sexism and oppression of women. And, you know, a guy would consider his wife or whatever a bit of a whore if her legs moved during sex. They were very repressed. And sex wasn't supposed to be for women's enjoyment. Like when I was growing up, women's orgasms, they viewed that as something as a myth. Luckily, our generation came along as the Mythbusters and thoroughly shifted the paradigm in that regard. But our father's generation, not so much. They didn't, frankly speaking, know their way around the pussy. And they didn't bother to. Um, so that's why Auntie was playing with the little boys, maybe, because Unc wasn't handling it, and even little man would grow up just to hate women and be a weirdo. So Linda went on to tell the star of a strange, frightening argument with him the day that Miller was killed. The girl that Milgaard went down for. She said, "My paring knife was missing," she later recalled saying to him. "You're probably the one who was out stabbing that girl," she said. And his reaction startled her. Said, "Knowing him as I did, I would have expected him to keep up with yelling and arguing, as he always did." Because she kind of was being disrespectful, talking how to turn in those days. For the trad wives out there, this is what was if you're really gonna hold it down, you can hold it down. So you want to get traditional. That was the tradition that these men was on. He's belligerently yelling at his wife over the meat being undercooked. That's not what happened. She was angry. She was getting the fight and said, "You're probably the one out doing that." And it stopped cold, and the color drained from his face, and he looked shocked and scared. So, I mean, there were signs. But what do you do? Do you call the police and say, "I think my husband is a rapist murderer," without any real, way of knowing? She just thought he was, a shitty husband, I guess. But that stuck with her. So after he was sent to prison, um, Fisher once felt the need to explain himself to his ex-wife in writing. And he sent her a letter, as she recalled, that he described how in one case he'd been sitting on a bus behind a woman and started getting a headache. He said he remembered following the woman off the bus and that his mind was blank from that point on. Then when it was over, he knew what he'd done. So, this is what's known as the urge to kill. This is what's known as the predator mind. The pressure is building behind his eyeballs. It's a form of anger. He fears no consequence. All he can singularly think upon is nothing. He just wakes up, realizes what he has done, and the pressure is gone, and he wanted psychiatric counseling but was refused. He knew something was wrong with him. Serial rapist Larry Fisher, the man responsible for the 1969 murder that put an innocent man behind bars for 22 and a half years, died in prison in 2015. So he kind of got picked up in 97, so that puts him about 18 years at the time. It should have been 48, roughly, a little less. Should have been over 40. 18 years. That's not a small stretch. So it caught up to him eventually. He couldn't stop himself, and he ended up where he belonged. He died behind bars. This was in Abbotsford, BC. He was in jail for the rape and murder of Gail Miller once they exonerated Milgaard. So these other crimes are not, they weren't prosecuted. He was 65 at the time. It wasn't an unexpected death. There's nothing suggesting foul play. He was just a man for health. Sad old rapist died behind bars. Cause of death was not disclosed. But unlike Gail Miller, he lived a full life. Raping and abusing his wife. Other women in the community. If you so much as riding on the bus with Fisher, he might just prey upon you. So we'll circle back to Milgaard. He ended up getting admitted to a Calgary hospital and he died. So just hours before his death, David Milgaard was doing what he had done passionately, tirelessly, and with conviction since he was released from prison the decades prior. He was advocating for prisoners. David Milgaard, who spent 23 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, died on Sunday, May 15th, 2022. So, he got, I guess, I'm trying to keep my math up with y'all, 25 years of freedom after 30 that he did, 25 years with 10 M's. He lived in the old age. He was trying to make sure it didn't happen to other people. It's a crazy story. He was admitted to the Calgary hospital late Saturday, died on the Sunday. He'd been camping with his family on the weekend, and the initial report said he died of complications from pneumonia. So, spending time with the family, had a camping trip. At this point, he's an older man. Again, I'm trying to keep my mental math up, but he would have been in his late 60s or so. Not that old, but he did 30 years of hard time. Like, when you've been through some things, don't tend to live that long. But who knows how he was coping. So a witness, Crystal Blanchard, and her family were camping beside Milgaard on a Saturday afternoon. She took a cell phone video of Milgaard just hours before his death. A vibrant Milgaard was doing what he'd been doing so passionately, tirelessly, and with conviction since he was released from prison decades ago. He was advocating for prisoners. In the grainy video taken May 14th, Milgaard could be seen sitting at a picnic table with a pen and paper and speaking about how he wanted to help inmates. On my to-do list is to get things happening with what are supposed to be resources. I'm not happy with the ones I got. They all identify the faults and rather than strengths. This place sucks life. The sadness is what is really taking place inside of prisons. Disgusting. So, he's no yin-yang twins. He's advocating. He's saying, look, I don't want nobody to go through what I went through. If you've been through what I've been through, you'd be up 10 M's complaining too. Trust me, is what he said. He's not in Paris. He's on the campground scribbling shit down like, I want to fix this. And then mysteriously died, so I don't know what this lady's paying pretty close attention. But she got with the media and told them what was going on. I'm not trying to spell no conspiracies. That's not what this type of podcast, but so 50 years after Milgaard's wrongful conviction, the University of Manitoba announced they were presenting him with an honorary Doctor of Law degree. And so on June 8th, 2022, 9:30 a.m., David Milgaard was to have taken the stage beside his longtime friend, David Asper, the wealthy benefactor, and his longtime friend, because he's now got some money too. We can hang out sometimes, dude. When he got out, he got to touch that 10. He said, what restaurants you like to go to? You can show me a few things. And I'm sure they went to Fort Garry. Got a bite. I'm sure they went Fairmont for brekkie around town. But I don't think he stuck around long. He had to go to Calgary. It's cold here. So he's touching Calgary, around Abbotsford, BC, border Calgary, Alberta. You want a little warmer climate. You got a little money. And they're both to get their honorary law degrees at that ceremony. It's too bad. But due to the pandemic, he just could not get officially awarded. And the moment have honored their respective remarkable lifetime achievements. I don't know if you want to ball Dave Milgaard in there. I'm not disrespecting the man. I don't know where they were going with that. It is a remarkable achievement to eat 30 years in prison for a crime you didn't do, I guess. I don't really know. Like, what? I don't know where they're headed with that, but I don't know a lot, to be honest with you, about um, what would have happened had that took place. Instead, ask for the former acting dean of the Faculty of Law. He'll stand alone, accepting on his own the 2022 Juris Doctor students, plus his Friends Award posthumously, and pass on Milgaard's legacy in hope for the wrongfully convicted to the next generation of lawyers. So Milgaard was subject to three books. When Justice Falls, the David Milgaard story, Real Justice, sentenced to life at 17, and A Mother's Story, The Fight to Free My Son, David Milgaard. That one was definitely a popular book amongst mothers when I was growing up. And she's like regarded as like the mom that like would not give up on her son. And I salute her for that. I truly do. Um, I can't imagine. So they're writing books about him. They also did 3 movies about him. David Milgaard's story, the docudrama, Milgaard, the crime stories, and crime stories. He's the subject of a song, Wheat Kings, by the Tragically Hip in their 1992 album. Also, Canadian artist David Collier depicted Milgaard's story in his 2000 comic book, Surviving Saskatoon. So, a bit of a Winnipegology vibe there. I guess he did a comic book. Salute to him. Might gotta check that out. I don't know. Saskatoon, I don't know. That's what Winnipegology. People don't know unless you really know what goes on in some of these small towns. So, Innocence Canada lawyer James Lockyer said the eulogy at the private service, and Senator Kim Pate was also in attendance. He died an important figure of injustice. At his time of death, Milgaard lived in Calgary, worked as a community support worker. He was married to Christina. The couple had 2 children, Robert and Julia. During an interview in September 2021, Milgaard said support from a lot of people, the church, and the advocacy network, work that he did while in prison kept his morality strong. If he didn't have that and didn't believe in the principles that he nurtured when he was inside the penitentiary, he wouldn't be the person that was there today talking to you, he had said at that time. In prison, Milgaard suffered hardships that led him to 3 suicide attempts. He survived being shot in the back when fleeing from police after he had escaped in 1980 for 77 days as he grasped at the freedom he deserved. He had a crazy life. And a lot of people don't really know anything about David Milgaard. So he escaped in 1980. Didn't last long, but Milgaard said when a convicted person goes inside a prison in Canada's punitive justice model, the correctional system is geared towards, safety and the potential for the prisoner to do harm. You're treated like someone who's less than a human, sometimes, said Milgaard. I know that is true. I was part of that system for 23 years. There is no healing, no support, he added. Above all, punishment doesn't help people help themselves. That's the key here, said Milgaard. Prisoners need to come to their own conclusion that they want to change, he said. Restorative justice can help and break the cycle of harm by providing an opportunity for the victim, prisoner, and community to resolve the root social causes of crime. Milgaard said the worst time for him in prison was solitary confinement in Stony Mountain Penitentiary. He was placed in solitary confinement numerous times for more than 6 months at a time and beaten by the guards. So if you've ever been up to Stony Mountain, it's not a fun place. It's a hard dungeonal jail. You're doing time. It's cold when it's cold, and it's hot when it's hot, and you're not getting out if you're David Milgaard at that time. And you're mouthing off to these guards or whatever the fuck. They're just going to beat your ass and throw you in a cage. They're not trying to hear it. I'm innocent, I'm this, I'm that, my rights in the third. No. You're prisoner 54627, whatever the fuck. And then they're going home and you're not. And that's how it works in that penitentiary. It's not there to rehabilitate nobody. He's 100% right. He said, when they asked him about it, they said, well, what was it like in solitary confinement? He said, take me to a place I don't want to go. He said, but he did go there and he recounted the nightmare. He paused, he let out a sigh. For me, what happened, I just started to lose it. I didn't realize what was even taking place after a while. In reality, my food would come and I would eat my food. When the door was open, I didn't even know what was going on. I wasn't normal. I had a mental problem. So it's one way to try to break a man is to put him in total isolation. If you can put him in a complete isolation, his mind might break. At this point, 1980 and that type of thing, there's whispers he might really be innocent. So he's got government involved, not trying to look bad, politicians and everybody the third. He doesn't have a lot going for him. He's in solitary, he's losing it. Not everybody can handle that. When you go in a situation like that, you know you don't have family, you don't have friends, you don't have anybody. You basically have a hole in the floor where you could defecate and your meals come in through a slot in your door. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. He's being a bit of a prison princess. I wasn't in 1980, I'll assure anybody of that, because I wasn't born. But, you know, I know a little bit about true crime. I got a little podcast thing I'm doing, and I'll be honest with you. There was no time when there was a hole in the floor. Yeah, you got your food through a slot. That 100%, that's still the case. You do. What does he want, a butler to bring it to? What difference does that make? You're getting your tray. You're in 24. You're not out. You don't have any time out of your house. You're in. You're in the box. Like, what did you think they were gonna do? But the hole in the floor. No, you had a toilet, D. Don't do that. But yeah, he was losing it. He's in solitary. I've heard stories, I guess, but I don't think about no hole in the floor. We'll see. Because he was so on the bug war baby. Because they don't want you ripping apart the toilet. He tried to kill himself 3 times. So yeah, he might have just had a hole in the floor and meals through the door because they couldn't trust you with sheets. They couldn't trust you with nothing. You kept trying to kill yourself. You're on suicide watch. You weren't on solitary confinement. You're on the bug ward on suicide watch. Trying to get out of your time by killing yourself. But in your case, it wasn't because you were mentally weak. It's because you were literally an innocent man in prison. Which, you can still make the argument, but in any event, not every man's built to, like, just go inside and, like, you know, like, this is the jungle. You know? Like, if you're not from that, he's not a convict. He's not a criminal. Like, can't move in that world. He was getting victimized. And then the guards was even trying to feed him a whooping. Like, stop killing yourself. I gotta fill this out. I gotta fill that out. I gotta take special care of you because we can't even leave you around the toilet paper. Pissing me off. But, you know, he was innocent, so I'm not gonna, like, knock anything on his time. And then he said, you start to think and you start to get critical of yourself and your life. And it is in this sort of way that you're kept that you start to maybe pick away at yourself in certain ways. You actually do. Yeah, you know, I mean, you start getting, I guess, self-conscious. Like, fuck, look at my life. Like, what is my life? I got caged. I'm in a fucking cage. I didn't even do anything. Fuck. It's disgusting, but you know, they didn't want to really bother doing their jobs over there in Saskatoon. And, you know, now he's in prison at this time. He's recounting that as far as you have no one to be part of your life. Sometimes you get out of your cage to go outside for an hour a day. but the worst of it is you're not receiving any interaction from anyone. So he's basically in like a supermax situation because he kept trying to kill himself. And he never got to go to a mental facility. They just kept him in Stony and put him on suicide watch. So you're just locked up, and they throw away the key. You're in a horrible situation. This is very unhealthy for any human being. You're not even allowed to communicate with other prisoners. Sometimes I was there for 6 months at a time. I was there quite a few times. They use it as a way to control people. For whatever reason, they believe you are not conducive to the running of the institution. They think you are causing the powers that be problems in the institution. So they just say, off with you. Away you go. You're in solitary confinement. You see how you like that for a while, buddy. Hey, man, I mean, you're entitled to complain, man. I don't know. Like, you're an innocent man. But at the same token, like, you had a hand in some of that shit, man. We keep it 1,000 a buck on the Winnipegology podcast. You were in. Do your time. Stop trying to kill yourself. You wouldn't have been in solitary. They don't just put people in solitary to pick on them. Oh, because you're a complainer. No, you kept trying to fucking kill yourself, D. That's why you were on suicide watch. You kept trying to take that way out, and you didn't do it. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I understand why you're religious. You tried to kill yourself 3 times, and it didn't happen. God said, wait. I got it for you. That shit would turn me religious, because he said, wait, I got 10 M's in the tuck. Calm down. And he actually touched it. You didn't have to wait till he was 40, and then before 40, he touched. And he's living his life, and he lived a life, had a family, everything else. So God got him, and God bless his ass. But yeah, he went through it. Some people still going through it. Matter of factly. So he felt dreadful at times. He feels bad just thinking about it. You go crazy after a while. If you do and don't behave, you're beaten. When you fight back, they just continue to keep you there. There's no way any human can survive that without going crazy. That is what solitary confinement means. Milgaard always spoke about kindness, about compassion, about the inherent good in people. In spite of all that had happened to him, he still had the ability to see the good in people, in humanity. Milgaard struggled with being institutionalized when he got out of prison. When inmates are in prison for extended times, they have difficulty coping with the world outside, which is no longer the world they knew, said Milgaard. It is something I felt would not take place in my life. I argued with people saying, no, I don't believe that is going to be a problem. It is a problem. When a prisoner is released, he may not feel free. When a prisoner no longer thinks about it, he is finally free, said Milgaard. So he said, I thought when I get out, I was going to say, fuck the jail. I'm free as day, OJ, all day. Get off my dick. But no, once you sit up, his mind is still institutionalized. You sat for 30 years, brother. No, you're not just going to fucking forget about that. That's your whole life. Oh, I thought I'd be chill. No, man. No, not at all. Not at all. People do way less than that and can't reintegrate. Period. So, he says, I am free to some extent, yes. He wasn't free in his mind in relation to dealing with living and being outside in a completely different world than it was before. At a certain point, you realize you aren't feeling anymore that you're free, right? Like, he's like, I miss so much of the world. Like, I don't feel like I'm even free. So he says he bears no malice towards the people whose testimony put him behind bars. His mans that snitched on him put him behind bars for 23 years for rape and a murder he didn't commit. Ron Wilson and Nicole John had traveled with Milgaard in 1969. They were key witnesses in his trial. There are kids being questioned by police, Milgaard said in videotape testimony that we finally get to hear about. He said, the bottom line is, they knew the truth. We all knew the truth, he said, but they changed. They were scared. Nickel was kept in a cell, apparently. So it's Nicole John. So apparently this was a female the whole time. They didn't gender her at any point, so I had no idea. Those were 2 buddies he was off. So they're pressing this girl. They put this little girl in a prison cell and said, tell us what we want to hear. Well, we're going to put it on you. You raped this girl. And she's like, wait, what? I don't understand. How could I rape a girl? Well, no, he did it. I didn't do it. So I don't know. The fact that this is a girl, unless this is not cisgendered or whatever it is, I don't know. I don't know. But sweetheart, let's use some of our own intelligence here. I didn't want to get arrested for the rape and murder. How were you thinking you raped her, dear, or what? So, again, careful who you hang out with, I guess. But nobody expects to be put in this situation. Anyway, can't see a young lady being held in a jail cell. It's just a terrible thing. Just a terrible thing what Saskatoon police did to her, he said. So in 1984, the 13-year-old girl went missing on her way home from school in Winnipeg. And we're going to have to get into that. So it's going to be in part 3. So, Larry Fisher. Sadistic rapist. Near serial killer. 1.5. We'll give him. Interesting mother. Poor wife, ex-wife. And he had that demon in him. The pressure builds. The urge to kill. He needed it. He needed the release. He needed the control. Because he was living his life perpetually as a victim. And he needed to victimize others because in his childhood, where he was trapped psychologically, his aunt abused him and he didn't like it. It wasn't okay. It didn't churn out a normal person. You can't molest children and expect them to be unaffected in life. Whether you're a woman or a man or anything, especially your own relatives. Sometimes a guy might go through it with a teacher or a babysitter and we see it on Instagram all the time. There's fucking baddies all around banging all these kids or whatever the fuck is going on in these schools. And you're kind of like, I don't know, man. I've been a 14, 15-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid, however old this kid was when it happened. Especially my generation, we was looking at nudie mags. We wanted it, whatever. A lot of guys kind of make that justification. But when it's like your own family, like your own blood relative, like that's just not gonna... You're not gonna just move on from that. And depending how far it went or whatever it was, I don't know the details, but obviously it was enough. Plus, then, the only male role model he had in his life is beating the hell out of his mom. And apparently he's like some type of rapist too, carrying on the tradition. It's not a good bloodline going on with the Fishers there. I don't know what went on with his kids, but they had to watch their dad, do 18 years in prison and die behind bars. Hopefully the cycle breaks with them. If he had kids, I don't know that they really clarified that in too much detail, but Larry Fisher, he sat back, said, "Oh, they caught the guy?" and then went right about his business. And when his wife said, "This is probably you." No. And she kind of fucking was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? So, you're going to get the final thought, but that comes at the final part. So we're going to carry